All right. Thank you very much, Arthur. I want to bring up our next very, very special guest. Our next guest is Mr. Michael Stumo. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Coalition for a Prosperous America. And this is a coalition of agriculture, manufacturing, and organized labor associations, companies, and even individuals. CPA works for policies to balance U.S. trade, maintain U.S. sovereignty, and develop an effective national production and economic strategy. Michael has a law degree, and he is a member of the bar in Massachusetts, Nebraska, and also in Connecticut. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thanks. Our organization, just for those of you who don't know us, we have quite an ideological diversity. We have a lot of people on the left, a lot of people in the middle, and quite a few on the right. Because the left of center groups are doing such a good job with the Democrats, we always want to do better. We've been focusing mostly on the GOP side throughout Fast Track and now, and we think we had a part in getting 54 GOP representatives to vote against Fast Track, and we of course need that to get up to like 80. But so we are left to right, but because our value add, we primarily have been focusing on the GOP side for the reasons of we need to up the votes on our way on that side in order to win. So this is a slide. Well, basically, I guess I'm here to talk about what are the talking points from the right of center for the president. And I know we had an earlier caller talk about one world order and Obama in charge. That's not necessarily what we say, but certainly that's something that's effective among the Tea Party right, with Fast Track and the like, and this one world order and the creeping one world order. On the economic side, I guess this slide is about our testimony. I guess you can see what it says, but I'm not going to really repeat this part of it. But in support of the one world order piece, there's something new with the TPP, relatively new, which is called the TPP Commission. And that's in Article, I believe it's 27, or Chapter 27 of the TPP. And that's a commission among the parties that can interpret the agreement in the future. And so from the right, having a global governance structure among the TPP countries called the TPP Commission, where it can interpret the agreement in the future, that's problematic from a conservative's perspective, that Congress doesn't know what it's voting on, and the thing can morph in the future. And further, there's a regulatory coherence chapter in the agreement, which provides direct access for foreign governments into our domestic regulatory process. Of course, that's problematic both on the left and the right, but from the right of center perspective, foreign interests have no business in our regulatory process. And Congress then doesn't know what it's voting on. How can it vote on something that's going to morph in the future in this living agreement sense? So again, these are principles that are common to the left and right on sovereignty, but they are touchstones. And for the right, they're pretty powerful. There's this one world order, global governance concept, and the TPP Commission and regulatory coherence are explicitly in the agreement. The next slide, please. So the president will be, I'm repeating what most of you already know, but the the president will be talking, I suspect, about growth and export-supported jobs and the like. We do have a flyer. There's a flyer on this slide. If you want the full flyer, you can go to our website homepage, prosperingamerica.org. We have sort of some sliding pictures on there. It's the second sliding picture, which has this. What it says is the most optimistic growth projection among the pro-TPP think tanks for the next 10 years is from the TPP is 0.4%. The best they can come up with, and that's if all tariffs are cut to zero immediately. That's the basis for it. So that's their most optimistic growth projection, which means that 99.6% of growth in the next 10 years will happen anyway. As to the agricultural trade, the USDA last year, so we're using the opponents' admissions against them. So the administration can't claim big growth because there's no one who projects it. People may say it, but there's nobody who projects it. The USDA itself last year, it's 2 years ago now, October 2014, 15 months, whatever it is, found that any increases in overall agricultural trade will not increase U.S. GDP or the U.S. economic size. So even in the agricultural trade, there will be no increase. Additionally, that flyer, if has citations for what we already know, which is there is no job creation. Of course, we think that jobs are destroyed, and that's what happens because of the net trade deficit. However, the Peterson Institute, one of the most pro-TPP think tanks, admits that it cannot find any correlation between trade agreements and job creation. So anyone who claims it is way outside anybody's, even the pro-TPP think tanks. There's no basis for claiming it. So it won't create growth. It won't create jobs. Of course, we think that it's a drag on growth, and it destroys jobs. Next slide, please. I guess that was the only slides. Arthur made good points on the tariff cuts, the 18,000 tariff cuts that half of them are for goods we don't trade anyway. Of course, Public Citizen, you may have seen, did a really great long set of bullet points on all kinds of TPP claims that are likely to or could be asserted by the president in his speech. One of them is that half of the tariff cuts are for goods we don't trade anyway, and a bunch of the rest of them are for goods that we hardly sell. We sell just a little bit of, like snow skis, for example. But another point for the tariff cuts and the market access is that we're not negotiating market access just for U.S. companies. We negotiated market access for Japanese companies and for Australian companies and for Brunei companies. It's market access for all of them. So when we negotiate market access for Caterpillar, we also got access for their competitor Komatsu. So there's no, it's not like a bilateral agreement where it's just U.S. market access. Everybody has it. There's no reason to think ours will be any better than theirs. We don't get disproportionate market access. That's where you get a competitive advantage, is when you get disproportionate market access. So I think those are the big claims that I've got to say, really, on the economic and the sovereignty piece. The TPP Commission and world government, the regulatory coherence, the no jobs creation by proponents admission, the no growth admission by proponents, and then the market access. One final point, the U.S. International Trade Commission is holding a hearing on the TPP this week for the purpose of drafting a report on the economic projections. The U.S. ITC typically does this for all trade agreements. It's usually required by statute. In this case, the fast-track TPA statute requires the U.S. ITC to do a couple things. One is a report on the results of all the past trade agreements in which it held hearings in November. In this case, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there will be witnesses because there's a lot of witnesses. They have to do it for 3 days on the economic projections for the TPP. Their report, I'll be testifying on Friday. Their report is anticipated, pursuant to their own regulatory announcement, to be done on May 18th. So Arthur gave an outline of some of the timing issues. One addition to that is I'd say that report is May 18th. So it may be worthwhile to argue that you can't do anything with TPP until we see what its economic impact is from the fast-track required ITC report, which won't be until then. So that's my thoughts for now.
Thank you very much, Michael. What we're going to do now is I'm going to open it up for questions. Again, if you have a question, not a statement, not a diatribe, a question for either Michael or Arthur, go ahead and press *6. Wendy, I just opened your line.
Thank you very much. I have one question concerning the omnibus spending bill and the H-2B visa extension from $66,000 to $264,000 regarding insourcing and the loss of manufacturing and all kinds of low-skilled working jobs for Americans here in the United States, and how that figures in here. And where can we get the organizational sign-on letters and copies to deliver? If someone could point me in the right direction, I would love to do that as well. Thank you. Check.
Arthur, part of that is yours because Wendy needs the sign-on letter. Arthur? Wendy, in the chat box, there should be information on the sign-on letter. Arthur may have had to drop off. I'm not seeing Arthur on my board. He may be back. Michael, is there any part of Wendy's question that you want to take?
I don't know the specific answer to it. Certainly there is I would take the opportunity to point out there is a chapter in temporary entry for business persons in the TPP that involves, immigration visas, permits, and the like. I haven't gone through that. Also, the TPP Commission can reinterpret that. That's something that the right is concerned about with immigration, but I don't know the answer to Wendy's question.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Mark, your line is open.
Hello?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
Yep, we hear you fine.
Okay, all right. Well, do you guys have a database of contact information that people can use to show up at local congressional offices, form a local coalition or group of people that can show up together? I mean, I've been to by a number of congressional offices, including my local one, by myself. But it would be good for all of us to form local groups and show up at our local congressional offices and tell them about the negatives of TPP. Do you guys have data on this? Local.
Well, we do. We normally can't just give people's contact information to other people without their permission. But what we can do is we can allow people to basically announce when they're going to a congressional office, and now it's going to annoy people. We can then email where you can go to see who has a visit planned to a congressional office. And if there's nobody planning a visit to your member of Congress's office, you can then create an event. And I know PDA, we would at least be willing to recruit people to go with you. That's one of the reasons why we don't just share names and email addresses. We need permission of the people who are on our list to give their contact information to anybody else. But that's a really, really good idea, and that's one of the things we're going to be working on, trying to get multiple people and organizations able to go together. I know Flush the TPP does a number of activities like that. So, yes, Mark, this is something we're looking at because it's much more effective. And Arthur is also going to be doing that. So I'm going to hopefully be talking to Arthur on Monday, and with any luck, you folks will begin seeing what this country needs, more emails. But it'll be about organizing congressional events. Paul, your line's open.
Yes, my question is for Mr. Stumo. I know one of his points was sovereignty, and perhaps just so you can maybe explain a little so that all right. I know, for example, that the Constitution of the United States is considered a living document, and so over time it gets interpreted in different ways, and through acts of Congress and the Supreme Court, etc., it gets agreed upon, and we agree with what it means. Now, are you saying that the TPP is also a living document, but instead of our government and our people deciding what it means, only the TPP Commission has a say?
Yes and no. Of course, from the conservative side, you have the sort of the Scalia view, which is not a living document. It means what they meant at the time. But for the TPP, so being a living agreement is like fingernails on a chalkboard for the conservatives. But yes, the TPP Commission can interpret it. Of course, the state-to-state dispute resolution tribunals can interpret it, just like WTO struck down country of origin labeling in a state-to-state dispute resolution, where country of origin labeling was never in the WTO, but they interpreted it to apply and invalidate our domestic law on labeling. So that's number two, the state-to-state dispute resolution. And then, of course, the ISDS tribunal system is another way it can be interpreted in ways that Congress did not foresee. So there are three ways in which it is a living agreement, and the TPP Commission is something new that is not typical in the past trade deals.
Thanks, Michael. Nancy, your line is open.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stumo, for your very excellent presentation and analysis of the economic and other impacts. I just wanted to check with you because you mentioned the May 18 date that the ITC report would be out, and that in the fast track in fast track, that is required. But my understanding is that, so I just wanted to clarify, is it required or not? And could President Obama, if he feels he has the vote, go forward without that report?
I think it is required to the extent that ITC needs to produce a report. I am not I'm not asserting. I don't know that Congress has to wait to vote on it until the report is done. I don't know if that. I don't think, but I'm not sure. But I don't think that technically Congress has to wait for the report. I don't know that that's part of the timeline. The president, sends implementing legislation, and then the timeline starts, regardless of the U.S. ITC report, I think. But I think it's an argument that it is prudent to wait until the ITC report before Congress has sufficient information to know whether this is a good deal economically. So it's persuasive but not mandatory. That's the way I think of it now.
Caller at area code 503. Your line's open.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I had a question about tariffs. Sometimes I think I understand them. Sometimes I'm not sure. I assume tariffs relate to the charge of bringing goods into America or goods exporting from America. Could you, Michael or Arthur, explain that?
Yeah, tariffs are a tax on imported goods applied at the border, but not exported goods. So when goods, except to the extent the country that they go to puts a tariff on it as a tax for importing. So tariffs are basically import taxes for imported goods.
All right. This is going to be our last question. Caller at area code 413. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to ask a question that I actually know the answer to, but I want to know if the speakers do. Not sure who to ask, so anybody can answer. I think someone said Obama's going to talk about the claim, the U.S. trade representatives claim that there will be an increase in the number of jobs supported by exports. And my question is, are you aware that there is a way that the number of jobs supported by exports can increase even though the number of jobs in the United States does not increase?
The way they have phrased their implication of job growth recently that I've seen is that they say trade, that there are X amount of export-supported jobs in the country. So trade supports these export-supported jobs. They don't explicitly claim the TPP, especially after the Washington Post a year ago gave the administration 4 Pinocchios for talking about job creation. They sort of toned down a bit on that, but they still say export-supported jobs. So if Acme Inc. in Asheville, Ohio sells two or three of its 100,000 product sales overseas, their employees are all export-supported jobs. So if we don't do TPP, the implication is we're going to be harming all those export-supported jobs. They will never address the import-displaced jobs. They simply won't respond at all, certainly publicly. And I know that in congressional briefings, when a congressman or woman asks, well, what do you have on the the jobs destroyed by imports, or something like that, they'll say, oh, well, I don't have that information right now. Next question. So, secondly, Commerce has used some sort of a calculation in the past that $1 billion in exports creates 5,000 or 10,000 jobs. They never discuss the import displacement side. And EPI has claimed, well, if the exports create that many jobs, then the import displacement destroys that many jobs. So $1 billion in imports, or $1 billion in trade deficit, is $1 billion in imports will destroy 5,000 jobs, and every $1 billion in trade deficit is a net loss of 5,000 jobs. So, 300 billion trade deficit times 5,000 is a lot, et cetera. So the short answer is they won't address it. The U.S. ITC, I've gone through some of their past reports. They actually, to their credit, usually don't claim much in job creation. That's, they've got their sort of economist studies and econometrics. They usually don't claim much job creation. So we'll be looking to see what they say coming out on May 18th or some other day and see if they continue that course where they can't really find much job creation, can use that as well. So that's a longer answer for saying they just discuss the exports, they don't discuss the imports, and that's how they kind of implicitly try to lead you to believe that there's a benefit.
I want to thank you, Michael, for being kind enough to stay with us and answer the questions. Some really amazing questions tonight. Our next
thank
speaker
you, Harriet.
is...
I just want to say you guys do such great work. I mean, it's just fabulous. And thank you, Harriet.
Well, this is Andrea, but Harriet is also on the line. So, yes, we so enjoy
Andrea,
having you.
Sorry.
No problem.
I'm embarrassed now.
No. Our next speaker is Dr. That was Harriet.